episode 11.
Hi, I'm Joel H. Brewster, and I'm no stranger to horror. And this is a podcast where I discuss the big and the small of the genre with the hopes to take you from being a casual horror fan to a spooky film fanatic like myself. Today, I will be speaking to Becca Kozak, who is a writer, director, painter, and documentary filmmaker, and currently a student at Vancouver Film School. We'll be discussing her film, Vancouver Video Vixens, and really just getting into who Becca Kozak is as a person and a horror fan. Hey, Becca, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing well.
So I'm just going to ask you the standard questions because I just want to get to know you as a person and let the audience get to know you as a person. Currently, you're in Vancouver Film School, right?
Actually, I graduated 2 months ago.
Oh, wow, you're graduated now. That's awesome. But the film that you wrote, the Vancouver Video Vixens, that was during the break you made that during the break. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah, we had like a 6 month or so break due to COVID. And it was just a way to keep myself busy that turned into something much more.
Oh, wow. And what got you into horror specifically?
Well, I have a boyfriend who's really into horror. I didn't get into horror until I took a break from university. I was studying to do creative writing. And I started watching all sorts of 80s horror movies. Like I love schlocky 80s horror movies like Street Trash, Terror Vision. So that's how I got into horror, just going on when I was studying creative writing, I was more into reading heavy hitting literature. Mm-hmm. And I always thought like horror movies were something lower or something, but that flipped a few years ago. And I really started educating myself, especially on like 80s and 90s, 70s horror too.
Okay. And was there a movie that you saw over the past couple of years then that was the one that you're like, you know what, I want to see more of this because of that movie? I
really like punksploitation movies because I'm really into punk rock. So a movie like Class of 1984 definitely got me looking more into horror, even though that's technically an action film. Yeah, and as I mentioned before, Street Trash. I love like movies with lots of melting, like The Fly.
So yeah, more of like a body horror sort of focus, right?
Yeah, and that's the thesis of my documentary, that women have a special connection to body horror due to some of the things we go through, like childbirth and menstruation. As
I got the chance to actually see your documentary, which was really, I'll really get into my deep thoughts on how much I liked it and how important I really thought it was. But in your own words, can you describe your documentary to the audience?
Sure. So I interviewed a variety of independent female filmmakers in Vancouver. And the questions that I asked them, they weren't the regular type of questions. I was digging deep into this thesis, I suppose. And so what came out of it is a pretty unique, almost like an intellectually based feminist documentary on horror.
It's so fascinating, but on top of that, I feel like it's a very important documentary. I have a note to like this to bring it up with you later, but I want to bring it up right now. Mm-hmm. I think that this is one of those documentaries in film in general that should be shown at like a university level sort of class, because that's what I really felt from it. Because I was aware of a lot of the filmmakers that are in it, whether I've known them professionally or whether I'm just a fan of their work. But I think that to get the insight that I got from all of them, it just makes me appreciate the ones whose work I've seen before, but also makes me want to dive into people's work who I haven't seen before. So it was very insightful look into the genre, I thought.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm actually looking into like selling the educational rights. I have a distribution deal that's being worked on right now. So for the documentary.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So was this an idea that you had in your head to do before the pandemic kind of shut everything down? Because from my understanding, you filmed this during COVID. Was it an idea that you had before that, though?
So how it started was I had an assignment from Vancouver Film School, which was to do a 1-minute documentary. So I texted or Facebook messaged Heather Perluzzo, who was the alumni of Vancouver Film School. So I thought I'd just do like a short interview with her. Because some of my professors said that we would get along. But then when I mentioned I wanted to do something about horror and feminism, she said, you should post it in the Women Filmmakers of BC Facebook group. And once I did that, I got an overwhelming response, and it really snowballed into something I never expected. Like, it was actually not intentional.
It's really cool. And it really touches on part of the documentary that I really liked was the sisterhood aspect of like the indie scene of Vancouver. Did you feel like really part of that once you started to dive into this documentary?
Yeah, I was actually amazed at how there was no question of my credibility. These women were super open, and obviously they were very interesting to talk to, very deep thinkers.
Yeah, and they really got parts of it got really personal, which was I thought was very beautifully done, and that's where I came. That's where I think it was really very insightful. There was just such an openness with you that it felt like it was a documentary that could be expanded even further. But I just loved how it was done.
Yeah, it would have been great to expand it beyond Vancouver, especially because I was doing it through the Zoom format there. But who knows? Maybe I'll get funding if someone watches this and they want me to do like a longer woman in horror documentary. I'd be down.
Oh yeah, I would. I think it would like. I'm just like inciting all these things that I'm such a fan of it in this way that I would watch it as like a Netflix series or like a bigger documentary as well. But just how it was done, specifically about the Vancouver film scene, is so original because I don't really feel like that it was like I've seen anything tackled like that way. And I love the score too. That was another thing.
Yeah, actually, that's royalty-free music from Carl at White Bat Audio, which he's on YouTube. So that worked out quite nicely.
No way.
Actually, the budget for the movie was pretty much zero. It was $100 to get an extra hard drive to save my footage onto. So now I have to look into licensing some of the clips, but yeah.
That was, oh wow, you just did this for $100?
Yeah. So maybe that's
awesome.
Inspiration for someone else to go out and make a film. Or I think actually, it was I used COVID as an advantage in a way that way,
Yeah, because a lot of people being home, I guess they really wanted to talk about horror because it was a time where people weren't even able to shoot at the time.
Yes, exactly. It was a horrific time as well.
Yeah. Were there any filmmakers that you were unable to speak to in Vancouver that you wanted to speak to or hope to speak to in the future?
Oh, I wanted to speak to the Saska sisters and I reached out to them, but I think it's all right that didn't work out because it's more about like the independent scene now.
Yeah. And you did get Tristan Risk in there, which was, I'm such a fan of Tristan Risk's work ever since American Mary, actually. So it was really cool to see her in there too.
Yeah, she's awesome. I love her. She's so cool.
Yeah, that actually made for one of my favorite parts was the Scream Queen acknowledgement of her, because I feel like that within the indie scene of Vancouver, she's very acknowledged that way. But it was really cool to see like other people talking about her in that way, as well as showing the different things that she's been in.
Yeah, I was really impressed by a lot of her films, like Frankenstein Created Bikers, Amazon Hotbox. I found that really cool and badass.
As for yourself, did you grow up around a lot of people that were into horror? Because you said that you came into it kind of later, but were you ever around that?
Well, actually, I was shown Jaws when I was 3 years old from my dad, so that maybe was a little inappropriate. But I remember watching The Shining when I was in, say, junior high, and really thinking that was interesting. But yeah, I wasn't really around it a lot growing up.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's one of those things now that I'm since doing this podcast, I've spoken to a lot of people that either were like from day one were horror fans or came into it later. And it's just, I love to hear that from either side, right? I like to hear that the life experience of coming into the genre later, but or either, right, being born into it. So it's one of those genres you can just either drop into or come in whenever. That's what I always liked about it.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention that I saw the Gremlins at a really young age, and that terrified me. So did Spirited Away. Like, there were a few films that really shook me as a child, and maybe that kind of like turned me away from horror for a while.
Yeah, it's a delicate balancing act there, because even in my last episode where I interviewed my wife, her sister is not a horror fan because she saw horror too young. But my wife's a huge horror fan because she saw horror at this like a year younger, right? Which is, it's a delicate balancing act. You can either scare somebody completely away from the genre forever or get them to be into it.
Yeah, you'll have to be careful with your 2-year-old there. I wouldn't show them Jaws, but yeah.
Yeah, it's funny with her too, because we watched Moana, And when my daughter gets scared, she says, "Not this one today." That's like her catchphrase of whenever she's scared. So in Moana, she was saying that for one scene with the crab. I'm not sure if you've seen it or if anyone listening has seen this, but there's a scene with a crab that goes glow in the dark and kind of scary. And she kept on just saying, "Not this one today." So that's when we had to kind of shut it off.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet.
Oh, highly recommend it for anyone wanting to get a Disney movie in. I'll put that in the show notes. Was there, along the way of making this, was there any outside of Vancouver, did you watch any other like women in horror, women directed horror films that really inspired you more to like, you'd like to speak to that director as well outside of Vancouver?
Yeah, Jill Six, her last name's a little tough. I can't say it right now, but her short film, The Stylist, and she also has a feature film version of that. I find her really inspiring.
Yeah, I know the movie, and actually, yeah, I know her. I haven't seen Stylist yet, but it was like one of those movies that was on my list to watch, and I'm gonna get around to it definitely.
Oh, Heather Buckley, she's like a punk rock film producer. She seems super interesting.
Oh, cool.
She's produced like her IMDb, it's like hundreds of films.
Yeah, that's badass. I'll look her up and I'll put her in the show notes. Another thing I really want to dive into, and this is where because I've never met you like in real life, but I've seen your stuff on Instagram, like before we even started like converse for this podcast. But one of the first things that popped out to me about you as a person that I've seen because of what I've seen online is your artwork. It is so bright and so vibrant and so original.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what got you into doing is it oil painting or what type of painting is that?
Oh, that's acrylic. And I have been practicing for a very long time, ever since high school. I have like many notebooks full of drawings. I started with pencil and then I graduated into acrylic, and it's a little bit inspired by use of psychedelics, perhaps, like the strange use of color. Now it's a useful skill because it's good for making movie posters and all.
Yeah, it's so cool because you have like I've seen your different movie posters, but it just seemed and I think that's where I first saw the Vancouver Video Vixens. I saw the artwork before I saw anything else because I have I'm friends with Ariel Hansen, and I saw that like pop up just like the artwork for that, and I was like, what is going on here? That's so cool, and I like that's kind of your style now that I see for your other films that or other work that I can see that art style is like a poster. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's like trying to create a connected oeuvre of work that way.
Yeah, but it's really, 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 really cool.
Yeah, and I saw that you wrote The Man in the Rabbit Mask. I hadn't realized that.
Yeah, that was really cool. I'm collaborating with that with Ariel Hansen. Yeah, that was a lot of fun to do that, and the formerly with the Akuma film team back in the day.
Yeah, and I also saw she gave you some script notes recently. She also helped me out a little bit with the script.
She's so awesome, hey? Yeah, she really, really helped me out with my feature film script that's hopefully gonna get some attention. But yeah, she really helped me out, and it really helped my future coverage. So yeah, thank you so much, Ariel Hansen.
Oh yeah, and not to put you on the spot, but can you give me like a short synopsis of that? I'm curious.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now everyone's gonna hear it. Yeah, the Victoria incident. It's a film about two lifelong best friends who are having kind of like the summer of their lives, but they're kind of drifting apart, and they come across a bloodthirsty lake creature. And this takes place at Thetis Lake. I really want to expand on the lore behind Thetis Lake, because Thetis Lake in Victoria, British Columbia, if anyone ever comes here, there is a legend of a Thetis Lake monster. And I feel like no one really mentions it, but there's incidences of people saying they saw it too. And it's supposed to be like a half man, half fish creature. And with how weird Victoria is in general, I thought it'd be a fun story to make about two, I don't want to call them underachieving, but two kind of chaotic stoners that are almost opposites, but when they get together, their friendship starts back up. So it was a fun story to write that had comedic elements in it and just absolute insanity throughout. And yeah, Ariel really helps me out get that story right where it needed to be.
Awesome. I love Victoria. I went to University in Victoria. It's definitely like a great vibe there.
Oh no way, you went to UVic?
Yeah, I went to UVic, yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, is that where you studied creative writing?
Yeah. I studied creative writing for 2 years there at UVic.
Yeah. I find that Vancouver and Victoria have a very distinct like appeal to them. And I think that's where your documentary really captured too, that a lot of people were inspired by like their vision of what Vancouver and like Victoria is, and trying to capture that. And I think it was Karen Lamb that mentioned that more stuff needs to be, I could be wrong, but more stuff needs to be filmed in Vancouver from Vancouver filmmakers. And I thought that was really important, especially in the genre.
She was also mentioning the sort of heaviness that exists in Vancouver.
Yes.
There's that in Victoria too, because, you know, talks of like a tsunami or whatnot, but it's also kind of lighter a little bit in Victoria. There's like a lot of weirdos in an awesome way.
Sorry, I was just going to add to that. Yeah, Victoria, sorry, the hauntings here is another big thing, right? There's a lot of ghost stories here.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, like the underground, like something about underground tunnels.
Yeah, there's that, and like every building here is like a ghost story. So this is now turned into a tourism map for Victoria. But if you come here and you're a horror fan, there's ghost walks and a lot of different hauntings and conspiracy theories about what's going on here, which I always thought was interesting. Another topic that I thought was briefly touched on in your documentary that I wanted to get some more expansion on from you. Karen Lamb pointed out that, and this is going to be a little heavy, Karen Lamb pointed out the perspective that she uses in like scenes of sexual assault, or like how rape revenge is perceived when directed by a woman. And I think that that was a very interesting topic that I've always kind of had in the back of my mind when it comes to that sexual assault in film in general, because films like The Nightingale and Revenge, which both have scenes of sexual assault in them, are shown in a different perspective than The Hills Have Eyes. And I just really thought that that touch that you did in the documentary to kind of bring up that topic was very interesting.
Yeah, like my theory is basically that if you dealt with something in your life, you should feel free to like show it on screen. I mean, I feel like as a woman, I feel I have the right to talk about sexual assault, bulimia, whatever it may be.
Absolutely. And I feel like that the perspective that each of the filmmakers kind of brought out their different mind on, and just the unbridled like not shyness of showing like gore and showing blood in the grindhouse genre needs to be told by different perspectives, and like a woman's perspective is obviously really important. I really like that spot too in the documentary pointed out, where each of the different directors brought up that women are less scared of blood than men, and I thought that was a really interesting aspect too to point out.
Yeah, for sure, because truly we deal with gore, like chunks of gore, like not to be gross, but you know, like that doesn't really gross us out, right? Mm-hmm. So it's interesting.
Yeah, and the cuts you did in there too about like showing like when you were talking about showing like childbirth and everything like that, it was like really cool like how you showed that aspect, because it's true. There's a lot of men that do get like squeamish about conversations about anything from menstruation to childbirth, right? So it was really interesting way to move that into the genre and show that perspective.
Yeah, and also I feel like as a woman, it's easier for women to open up to me to bring up topics like this. Like I feel like perhaps a man interviewing them, they might have been a little bit more awkward about it, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Did you find, because Gigi brought up this about ageism, you found none of that when you were doing this documentary?
No, like, yeah, like I said, I was amazed that like, there was really no questioning of my credibility. Yeah, everyone is super open to talk to me, and like all the women are about a decade older than me, like, so they're all pretty well established.
Absolutely. Are you looking to do more documentaries, or are you going to go back into, or are you going to just alternate between documentaries and like hopefully feature films?
Yeah, so I have one other short documentary I did on YouTube, which is called Lisa Suckdoll, which is about Lisa Suckdoll, who's a punk noise performance artist. She's really wild and very smart. She would get naked on stage a lot, and she's written many books. So I have a 17-minute documentary on her, but I'd like to almost, unless I find some other interesting musicians who would be happy to have me represent them that way, I'd like to move more into horror, which I've done with my recent Run and Gun film. And I also have a film called Ice Cream Baby I'd really like to make, which is about a woman who is raped by an ice cream man, and she's infected with the fetus causes her to melt slowly. So it's kind of like a nihilistic feminist body horror film. And I have a short and a feature of that. So that's where I'd like to pivot to next.
Wow. That sounds, yeah. Did you make, so the short for Run and Gun, was that based on this one?
No, that was, I was just trying to think about what film I could make with, like in my apartment with just a few actors. And I came up with a girl is cured of her bulimia through cannibalism. Like her mother rips out her tongue and forces her to eat it to try to cure her. I don't think that gives too much away, but yeah.
And so that's your Run and Gun, just to confirm.
Yeah, that's my Run and Gun film.
Okay, so for anyone, not because I'm aware what Run and Gun is, but for anyone that is not from Vancouver or doesn't know what Run and Gun is, can you break down what that is?
Sure. So it's a 48-hour film competition. So you're given 3 elements, which include dialogue, a prop, and a theme. And you have to write the script, shoot, edit, and sound design in 48 hours. It's a lot of fun. I recommend it to anyone. It was an extremely rewarding experience.
How much sleep did you get that weekend?
I 3 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting. It was very fun to like get into that strange, different side of consciousness that happens when you don't sleep for a long time.
Oh, I can imagine. Was that your first Run and Gun?
Yeah, and it was the time of my life. Like I loved sitting down and editing for like, whatever hours straight, I guess 20, maybe 12, something like that. It gets a little bit lost, but like that was the time of my life. I don't think I've ever had that much fun. I love editing now.
Yeah, I guess you got a lot of time to edit too when you were doing this documentary as well, right? So you've like.
Oh yeah, that was quite the journey. That took a long time to edit.
Yeah, it's really cool too that this documentary has been because you've gotten it in Dread Central, I believe, and I think Dread Central's the last article I read in reference to that.
Oh, yeah, and also there's an article in Film Threat, and that's quite a positive article. They also mentioned that it would be good for university study in Film Threat. They're not so much a genre website, but they definitely got like the feminist element, because that's more universal.
Yeah, because that's what I think too. I was when I was watching, I was expecting it to be, and it is very obviously based solely in the genre of horror, but I was expecting it to only be that. And when I got to sit down, and which would have been fine, but when I got to sit down and watch it, it was just so important, which was really cool. Because the only other horror documentary I've seen was, I think it's called A Nightmare Run White and Blue. I'm not sure if you've seen that. No, it's a documentary about the history of horror and the history of how horror correlates with real life situations that have happened. So how in the 50s there was a big drive to make horror films that are based on like atomic creatures that are like growing because of the fear of the atomic bomb.
Oh,
so it kind of goes through like that. And I was like, oh, that's a very cool horror documentary and to learn about the history of horror. But I felt like this documentary was interesting in the history somewhat of Vancouver filmmakers and women in film in Vancouver. But I thought the perspective angle of it and the importance of it comes when talking to these women about why the voice of marginalized groups, whether it's women of color too, also mentioned in this documentary, and the stories that come out of them. That's why I thought it was really something that should be shown in all universities to do with film.
Yeah, it's definitely a different take. It's not your regular documentary.
Yeah. So when you're doing this, were you watching a lot of documentaries, or did you just go, you know what, I've seen what type of I'm going to stay away from them, or what was your angle with that to make it so unique?
I was spending so much time just I was relentlessly researching these ladies. And well, another thing was at the same time I was working on my Lisa Suckdoll documentary, and she's an interviewer. And the way that she does interviews is she doesn't ask people about the work that they do per se. She asks like these kind of like random, they seem random, but they're like just what she wants to know. It's a very unique way of interviewing. And so I thought, I'm just going to write questions that it's not like, tell me about how you made this film or whatever, like I was going to come up with what I actually wanted to know. Yeah. So that really helped me come up with like the unique questions that I used.
I can see why that makes sense. I can see why the women that were involved were like excited to answer the questions. You can see that in their voice, or sorry, in when you can actually see the documentary, you can see like just how they kind of leapt off the seat to answer all the questions because they were such unique questions.
Yeah, they were surprised, it was interesting to surprise them. It's fun. Oh, just the fact that I mean I'm being vulnerable enough to ask these weird questions, I think made them allow themselves to be more vulnerable in their responses, right?
Oh, absolutely. One thing you mentioned earlier too, and it comes out like a lot of your art style as well as like what your topics you decide to to paint. Punk rock. What got you into that music? Did you grow up around it, or was that a late blooming thing as well?
Ooh, well, since I was 5 years old, I've been listening. My dad would play the Ramones and the Beatles for us, so I've always been interested in that. I have a twin sister, and growing up, we really wanted to like solidify our identities because we were always being referred to as a unit. So she it's almost like this conscious decision where she decided to be more of a hippie and I decided to be more of a punk. But yeah, that decision definitely happened around high school. So yeah.
That's what do. So with that, are you looking to put more punk into your work? Because it seems like that is a lot of your angle as far as art goes. Is that going to translate a lot into film, or is it just going to be some of your films?
I'd like to try to use more, punk rock music in my films. And I recently started learning guitar. I'd like to do, I don't know if you've seen like Dead Man or anything like that, where they have those Neil Young soundtracks. They're just like that crazy guitar throughout. I'd love to like write my own soundtracks and just use like obscure punk songs in my films.
Yeah, that's really cool because I saw that you kind of labeled yourself as like a punk filmmaker. Would that be correct to say? Like as far as
Yeah, that's a general label.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool label, and it's just a very unique and yeah, again, it goes back to your art and how it connects all together. That I think that I could kind of see in the future. This is just an outside looking in here. That with your name, just like like a Becca Kozak film, like on everything in that sense, because it's just such a unique way to look at film as a perspective. Are you planning to stay in Vancouver? Are you like as far as film goes, or do you think that's like your city to make films, or are you going to look to like get out of Vancouver if the opportunity arises?
I'm planning to stay in Vancouver. I wouldn't mind going to Victoria and doing a few films there too, because Nadine Lesperance, who I interviewed, lives there. It'd be awesome to work with her. I mean, even to work with you if you're planning to film your feature in Victoria.
I like where this is going. An on-air offer, absolutely. If I can send you the script,
yeah,
this could be history of the making right now. This could be like where this conversation started. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, Victoria is a cool place. I think it'd be like a cool place to kind of. I think it's an untapped market too. I've always kind of thought that for the horror stream, because we have a lot of things that are filmed here that are just like Hallmark movies are only filmed here. But I think that we could expand. It's a place that I think could have a really cool genre look to it.
Yeah, there's just this wonderful underground in Victoria of weirdos and and punks and hippies. It's just such an exciting place, and it took me a while living there until I could get into that. Yeah, it's an exciting city, but yeah, I'm planning to stay in Vancouver for the most part.
Yeah, I feel like that. Yeah, it's a lot of the tourism stuff that people don't see is that sort of like yeah, a different scene than just yeah, what's it called, like the newlyweds, newly dead, what they usually call Victoria. I feel like there's a completely different scene that a lot of people don't see. So capturing that, I think, would be really cool.
Oh, for sure. Actually, I was kind of inspired by there's a documentary on punk rock in Victoria, and I thought that was really neat. Oh yeah, Somewhere to Go, Punk Victoria. I remember seeing that in theaters when I was in Victoria, and yeah, that could have partly inspired Vancouver Video Vixens for sure.
Oh, cool. Okay, well, I'm gonna put that in the show notes because I haven't seen it either. Well, I haven't seen it. Sorry, I should say you've seen it. I haven't seen it, so I'm definitely gonna check that out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely living there. It opens your mind to like, there's just some awesome acts out of Victoria.
Hmm. So as far as shorts go, is there any more short ideas you're looking to do?
For sure. Yeah, I have quite a few short ideas other than the ice cream baby idea I just mentioned.
Hmm.
I have a short idea which is about a rock and roll group of witches, and they uh, they try to invite a girl into their coven, and then she realizes that they're not what they seem, that they're satanic, and she tries to tell the media about them. And they counteract that with a song that destroys the morals of America and causes all the teenage girls to become pregnant and drug ravaged. And it ends with like this new generation that's genetically destroyed by these witches. It's kind of inspired by like the Satanic Panic and PMRC. What else? I also have this film Menstrual Melt I'd really like to do, which is a series of gender parables. I guess it's sort of like almost like a pandemic story where women get infected and their menstrual blood turns like these crazy colors, and I don't know, it's kind of schlocky. It's very like 80s street trash. There's not a lot of like, sure, there's a little bit of a feminist underlay there, but
Yeah.
it's mostly about the gore.
It's really cool because it seems like, based on the theme that you from your shorts just there, it seems like that these could all go together to make an anthology, and you've got like a really general like theme going on with each of these that I think would make a really like for a really cool anthology.
Yeah, I'd love to do an anthology of Ice Cream Baby, Menstrual Melt, and that witch story, and then go on to doing a feature version of Ice Cream Baby, which I've written.
Mhm.
That'd be cool. Something like that.
Oh, so is your feature, the script's already written for your feature, or are you planning to write it?
Oh no, it's written for Ice Cream Baby.
Oh, cool. Yeah, because it really does seem like that. Yeah, the anthology sort of vibe from there. Except for Ice Cream Baby, are they planned to be features as well?
I mean, yeah, like I definitely feel like the witch one has the potential to be a feature. The menstrual melt one, it's really just like a series of almost random parables that ends in like the most shocking way possible, which is like uh it ends in like a miscarriage slash cunnilingus scene.
Interesting. It feels like there's a lot of well, pregnancy seems to be a theme in two of your films there, or is it three?
Yeah. I'm not sure, probably two, but pregnancy has always really terrified me. I don't know how regular women think about it, but just the thought of like that imminent extreme pain that could possibly lead in death, and also like this, the parasite growing inside of you, is just not a very pleasant idea to me. Maybe my biological clock will shift, but it's like better get these like pregnancy horror movies out before I become comfortable with the idea, I suppose.
Yeah, it was interesting too to hear that angle in not just from you, well, from you now, but also in the documentary too, because that was mentioned by, I can't remember, one of your filmmakers also mentioned the same thing too.
Yeah,
About
Ariel Hansen did actually. Yeah.
right, it was Ariel that mentioned it. Yeah, I can definitely understand the angle of that, and it's definitely does make for some interesting body work from like, especially from a woman's perspective on that too.
Yeah, because we have Rosemary's Baby, but we don't have like the female version. We might have something, but I don't know.
Well, it's definitely not a thing I think there's a movie that's actually coming out really soon in reference to that, False
Oh yeah,
Positive.
Alana Glazer's movie, like from Broad.
That's yeah. I'm excited to see that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it kind of makes me feel competitive in a way though. Like I'm like I have to get my stuff out there.
Oh yeah, but hopefully what will happen from this, it creates like a pregnancy horror subgenre.
Oh sure. Yeah. Then there's lots of room.
Yeah. Yeah, Alana Glazer being in a horror movie is really exciting to me for some reason because I really liked Broad City.
Oh, me too. I love Broad City. That was one of my favorite shows growing up, and still.
It's interesting too. Someone brought up somebody in a film group I'm in actually got a chance to see the movie, and they described it as the most serious episode of Broad City. And I'm like, that makes me want to see it.
Oh yeah.
I think they tried to make that a negative, and I'm like, I kind of want to see it more.
Yeah, that's not negative to me at all. Oh, there's some trippy episodes of Broad City, some stuff that was, I don't know about scary, but when you think about that, like Shrooms episode or something like that. I don't know.
Oh yeah, or even the implications of the Val episode where Abby actually has like a whole other persona. Like
It's a little training. Yeah.
yeah, that show is I love that. I absolutely love that show. We could like literally do an episode of just talking about that show.
Of course. Yeah. 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 And there's all these Easter eggs and just these like little moments that when you're a dedicated fan of that show, it's
Yeah.
really rewarding.
Like do you know the Leanne Easter egg? Where the song Leanne is like this made up song and it's in like multiple episodes throughout the show.
No.
Oh, it's funny. They mentioned it in one of their like behind the scenes thing, and when they show you the playback of all the episodes that it's in, it's like sang in a karaoke. It's in a car that the girls get in. It's multiple throughout the show. It's really funny.
Yeah, I mean, you think it's like some dumb stoner comedy, but it's actually layered with all this detail.
Mm-hmm.
It's no workaholics. It's a little bit of a step above that, in my opinion.
It's interesting to see what they were doing outside of Broad City too, because I'm such a big fan of both of them.
And you said that your film is like something of a stoner comedy in a way, like your.
It is, and I was heavily inspired by Broad City, but I was inspired by like a lot of different things I was watching, and some of the stuff during the pandemic.
Time Traveling Bong, perhaps.
Loved Time Traveling Bong.
I love the witch part, like episode or whatever. That's so funny to me.
What's the guy's name? I can't remember like the actor's name in it. But he's also in Broad City too. But he killed me in that too.
Oh yeah, I forget his name too.
I'll put his name in the show notes. I can never remember. It's usually my excuse when I'm like, oh, I'll look this back up later because yeah, I can't remember his name offhand.
Yeah, that show was fucking hilarious.
Was there any other like outside of horror, like what other shows are you into? Just a general question here.
That's a good question.
I'll let you think on that. Gonna put you on the spot there.
I really like The Young Ones, which is like a British comedy from the 80s, and it has like a punk and a hippie and a communist all living in a house together. That I find is pretty funny, as is like the show Absolutely Fabulous, which is about these two older British ladies who just get drunk all the time.
Oh, I know Absolutely Fabulous. I don't know The Young Ones. That sounds interesting though. I know Absolutely Fabulous is amazing, but
yeah, both of those are awesome. And yeah.
So do you watch a lot of British humor then? Is that like inspiration for you too?
I don't know, maybe just those two. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of some other ones. I love like beyond horror. I'm really a fan of John Waters films and Russ Meyer. I love like exploitation films and anything campy.
Yeah, on the topic of campiness, I watched this movie last night. I'm gonna disclaim this before the sentence. It's not what it sounds like. I watched the movie Porno last night.
Oh yeah, it's on Shudder.
Yeah, and anyone listen to this, I think I've written an article about it too. That movie is I've seen it before, but I'm making my wife watch it because she hasn't seen it yet. Is such a weird campy film that it's so well done. Have you seen it before?
No, I haven't, but like I'm really a fan of sexploitation films as well.
You'll love it. You'll absolutely love it. It's one of those things that when you were talking here earlier, I'm like, oh, if you haven't seen the movie, you'll absolutely love it.
Sounds good. I'll write a note.
Yeah. And another one I made my wife watch recently that I'd seen before, but I demanded that she watch it because it was one of those ones I watched alone. And I thought it was one of the greatest things I've ever seen is Psycho Gorman.
Oh, yeah. I haven't seen that yet either.
Oh, Psycho Gorman is like one of my favorite Canadian films that's ever been made. Like, I love that movie so much.
Sweet. I'll give that a watch. And speaking of Shudder, like, I forgot to mention Joe Bob Briggs, like The Last Drive-In. I love that show.
Yeah.
I've seen every episode of that.
Nice. I need to watch more of it. I've only seen a bit because I love Shudder. It's one of my, if there's anyone listening to this that works for Shudder, one of my goals is to have a feature film that's on Shudder. It's a weird goal, but like it's a very weird specific goal, but I want that more than an Oscar. Like
yeah. I mean, one of my teachers from Vancouver Film School, Nicholas Humphreys, he was saying, oh, maybe you could get your documentary like Vancouver Video Vixens on Shudder. And I was like, wow, that's you're
Oh, I think this would be a perfect documentary to be on Shudder. It just has that energy and it just really, again, it's so insightful. And I think that one thing that's really cool about your documentary is, as a person that is a fan of a lot of the women that were in it and became very interested in a lot of the other directors that I had never heard of before. So it's interesting. There was a spread of directors in this sense for me that there were some I knew personally. There's some that I've seen some of their work, and there was some I hadn't heard of before that I really want to see their work. There was like not one person that I saw that whose work where I was like, oh, I don't want to see that. Everyone's work that was on there, I was like, I really want to see that. And I just think that it was such a cool thread of like grindhouse horror that I think that it really opens up what people think of Vancouver. So I think that it would be perfect on Shutter.
Yeah, and like at first it was a little bit broader. Like I had done a few more interviews and some got cut, but I really wanted to focus on horror because that was like the main thesis after all.
Yeah, I thought it was just really it's interesting too because there are obviously very different films and very different filmmakers that were on there. But the way that you cut it all together, especially with the added scenes that you added there from like different older films and such, that it all cuts together so well that it seems that the scene just really ties together. That it is really a grindhouse base, but it seems like a Vancouver grindhouse is its own genre, which that's what I really liked about watching this too.
Yeah, I feel like before I moved to Vancouver, before I even started this documentary, I had no idea about this collection of women and, or as the Film Thread article put it, a coven. Yeah.
I like that. But one of the first short films that actually got me into horror is Gigi Salguero's Slam. That when I saw that, I was like, oh, I want to write horror shorts after I saw that film. So it was really cool to see her in there. But I was not surprised to see her in this documentary.
Yeah, she was one of my teachers at Vancouver Film School, and she's an idol, I think, of everyone's in the film, as you can tell by that little part where everyone's hyping her up.
Yeah, her and the whole Luchagor team I think it's going to be one of those things that we're going to, as they grow, which is I've kind of thought since since I saw Slam, I was like, oh, they're going to be huge. Like the whole team behind this is going to be huge. And I feel like that as they continue to grow and as they get bigger things with like Blumhouse and so on, it's going to be one of those things you're going to look back at and be like, oh, you can see it from the beginning. And I think it's really cool to see the growth of that team.
Yeah, and if your listeners are curious, you can watch El Gigante in full on Shudder.
That's right. Yeah, and also on YouTube. A lot of these shorts and features from the people that are in this documentary available on either YouTube or distributed elsewhere? Because there was a lot of them I just really wanted to see, and I wasn't sure where to look for them.
Actually, no. Like I was given private links for most of them, so everyone just has to be patient, I suppose, or watch the documentary for a few little clips, right? Like one of my favorites is Ramshackle Blues by Shry Rules.
Yeah, I really want to see that.
Yeah, I'll have to ask her when that's coming out. Oh. And then maybe you can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll do, because there was a lot of them just visually. I'm like, oh, I really want to see that. I was writing down notes. I'm like, I really want to see this. When's this coming out? It's cool that they're finding different ways of doing like festivals runs, I'm assuming.
Nadine L'Esperance, you can find her shorts on Facebook, on YouTube. Her cooking show is really awesome, Chaos in the Kitchen.
Okay. Yeah, I'll put that in the show notes because, again, there was not one thing I saw in this documentary that I was like, I didn't want to expand on. I'm like, oh, I want to see more of that. Another shout out to Ariel Hansen. I saw that she just, I think she finished her first draft of the movie Clout for the feature.
Yeah, I can't I saw Clout, I think on, it could have been Vancouver Short Film Festival or something like that. But yeah, that one is really impressive.
Yeah, and that one had one of the coolest posts. Do you remember the poster for Cloud?
No, you'll have to put that maybe in the show notes as well.
Yeah, I'll put that in the show notes. That has one of the coolest movie posters I've ever seen for anything across the board. I'll put the artist's name in the show notes too, because I'm not sure who it was, but it was one of those things that like viscerally jumped off the page and went, what is it? Before I even read the title, I was like, whatever the hell this is, I want to see it. It kind of seemed like a sci-fi mixed with a horror poster. It's super, super cool. I really want to see that.
Yeah, and of course, Ready to Burst is really cool as well.
Great, and it fits within that genre that you really like there.
The pregnancy body genre, yeah.
Yeah, that needs a specific name, because I feel like with you putting out in the future, they're putting out like multiple shorts as well as feature. It's going to grow, so it needs like a specific coined name there.
Yeah, for sure. I'd have to think about that. I don't know if I could do that on the spot.
Yeah, that's really tough. I don't not to put you on the spot there. All right. Yeah, just to wrap up here, where can we find you on social media?
So on Twitter, Kozak Becca. Also on Facebook, Becca Kozak. On Instagram, it's Beelzebub_Barbie. Yeah, and my website is beccakozakfilmmaker.com, and you can find me on IMDb.
I will put this all in the show notes. But before I let you go, can you give me the origin of your Beelzebub Barbie? Because I remember I think you followed me maybe you followed me first, but I remember seeing Beelzebub Barbie followed you, and I was like, whoever this is, I have made it. Like, it was like one of those things where like, this is so cool. Like that, see that name like pop up, I was like, I felt as a horror blog, there's like certain like I'm not sure if I'm speaking for everyone else, but like for myself, when I see like people that can like based on their profiles or horror fans following me, it's just like an added, like I feel like extra happy that I'm reaching out to those people, or like I'm, you know what I mean? Like I'm getting within the radar. When I saw Beelzebub Barbies followed you, I was like, oh, that's it. I made it. It was so cool.
Yeah, that actually started with my I've had Tumblr for ages, and that was my Tumblr name. I think I came up with it when I was in high school. I love alliteration, perhaps a little bit too much. Vancouver Video Vixens might come out with a new name. Actually, I'm working on it with my distributor right now.
Oh, really? Oh, well, I was going to ask you what it would be, but I guess you guys are working on it and you wouldn't be able to discuss that yet. But
yeah, no, not yet. But
yeah,
a few ideas.
Yeah, Vancouver Video Vixen's a cool name though. For the time being, I really like that title.
Yeah, it's pretty straight up. Like it is what it tells you what the film is in a way, right?
Yeah, and they're gonna. Well, I'm not sure if you can discuss this, but do you think they'll be keeping your the art style as far as like your posters and such? Because that's definitely really cool.
Yeah, there hasn't been any comment about that, so I think that they're down to keep that.
Cool. Well, yeah, I'll let you go here, but before I let everyone else go, you can find me at West Coast Strange on both Facebook as well as Instagram. Yeah, and this has been another No Stranger to Horror. Thank you guys so much for listening. Becca, thank you so much for being on the show, and I will definitely talk to you more about my feature film scripts. Hopefully, this is the beginning of our, like, not to, like, no pressure here, but like, hopefully this is the beginning of like a horror like combination here.
Yeah, collaborative relationship. I mean, I saw that I actually have one question before we end things. Did you end up writing a running gun? Because I saw that you were in the crew database for that.
I did. I ended up working on, but I was here, so I don't feel like I get to claim as much run and gun like praise as everyone. Well, not even praise. I don't get to claim as much run and gun like hype as everyone else because I was still here. I couldn't make it over to Vancouver. But yeah, I did work on a script with the team over there. So yeah, so I'm not really sure how far my name is going to stay in the credits. So for the time being, I'll just keep quiet on what that project is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to let me know in private or something.
Yeah, definitely will. And that concludes another episode. Be kind and watch more horror.